Alright, we're going to do tonight Siman Kuf Pei Hey in the Hilchos Niddah. It's a very unusual type of Siman. It's a short Siman, 4 seifim. It's unusual because the halachas are not so much the regular halachas. They're more, I don't want to say hypothetical, but are situations that involve to a certain degree ne'emonus. Ne'emonus is a concept that we spoke about in Hilchos Basar and in Taaruvot, if you recall, with kafela. Do you trust the goy? And we said, well, it depends. If he's concerned about losing his job, right? Or if he's a cook, he knows what he's talking about, so he's a professional. And this question of the manas actually comes up quite a bit in Hilchos Niddah, the area of consulting with a doctor. Do we trust the doctor? He says, well, this blood is coming from a different spot. It's not dam mihamakor. There are many issues where we consult doctors. We have to decide whether we can rely on the doctor. Now, obviously, if it's a situation of pikuach nefesh, the doctor says this is extremely risky, this is dangerous, then you tell the individual to eat even on Yom Kippur based on the testimony or the professional advice of the doctor. We don't take a chance, right? So there are times, of course, that we're going to rely on the doctor, depending on how sure he is of himself, depending if he's saying this as an opinion, or depending if giving us medical advice. So there are quite a few situations where we need to dig a little bit deeper to see whether we can rely on this doctor's testimony, because obviously the halacha could come out different. And obviously it's a Jewish doctor, well, it depends if he's a religious doctor or not. Can you eat in somebody's home that you know are not kosher? And they tell you, but this food that I bought for you is kosher. You see, another example of ne'emanos. Well, if you see the packaging and you assume, and you know that they're most likely telling the truth, even though they are not keeping, then you may be able to eat in their home, as long as, of course, you're not eating in their kelim. These are people that perhaps meat and dairy, kitchen is not kosher. There are ways to eat in somebody's home who's not kosher. Paper plates, dairy food, that may have less problems. If you can, of course, avoid eating in someone's home that is very questionable, obviously you should be tactful and avoid and come maybe only for dessert. But there are times where it could become very uncomfortable. Pesach is another area where one needs to, of course, be very careful. And that's where the question of ne'emanos comes in.
It will be knowledgeable.
Sure.
They might think, sure.
Exactly, sure.
They don't know.
That's very true. They don't know all the halachas. Exactly. So that's also true. Yeah. So ne'emanos does come in, does appear quite a bit in halacha in various situations. Here in Siman Kuf Pei Hey, we're going to be talking a little bit about the ne'emanos of a woman. Can we trust her? I mean, this is your wife. Hopefully you trust her. One of the greatest virtues of Eshes Chayil, Shlomo Melech says in Mishle, is Batach Balev Ba'ala. If a husband can trust his wife with his eyes closed, she's the mother of his kids, his children properly. When he's not home, she's going to do the right thing. If he can trust her, he's a lucky man.
What alternative does he?
It takes luck.
What?
What alternative?
What alternative? Yeah.
Does he?
Well, we will.
Someone when,
Exactly. Right.
and we try, other than in the two cities, we have an
Yeah.
alternative to Mikvaot.
Right. That's what we're going to be learning about the mikveh here. Yeah.
I mean,
Well, there is an alternative. I mean,
you know, your mother go. I mean,
no, not that. I mean, there are situations where she may have to check herself if there's any doubts about it, and perhaps you may have to spy. Perhaps if there's reason to doubt, perhaps you may have to, examine the situation a little deeper, and we will see when there's a reason to doubt. Yes.
I don't read a famous rabbi.
Sure.
To a new old who became the rabbi.
Okay.
You probably know who it was. It's a famous story, and he noticed that all.
Yeah.
He said that's a terrible thing. Minhag here, they're asking about the wives to spy on your wife.
Yeah.
And he forbid them to do that. So he wanted to know what was going on. So
Right.
That was the bottom line, that they could now.
Yeah. Right, but that's I didn't hear. I did not hear the secret story, and please do. And we will see from halacha that that's not the way to do.
But if you're not going to have in the community.
Well, obviously, I don't know what the situation was there.
Exactly.
It could be that particular community had great difficulties Nemanas because of some difficulty in going to the mikveh. Maybe it's very cold, they had to go to the river, who knows? Right? So they needed a little bit more of some sort of a stronger indicator, testimony of the Shamash. So please, find me out where this is. I'm interested to see this. But as we will see here, the situation is a little bit different. But just a little bit of background about Nemanas Ha'isha. What do we know that we can trust an Isha? After all, when it comes to Eidus, plain old testimony, where you need two testimony, where you usually, according to the Torah, need two witnesses, we learn that from a pasuk, Chazal darshans, from the pasuk Ve'omdu Shnei Ha'anoshim, and they learn it out from now the pasuk where it says Anoshim, that you need Anoshim. You need men, not a woman. So a woman is pasal Eidus, where you need two Eidim, for example, in the case of Dinamamonas, monetary issue, in Nefashos, and Dava Sheba Erva, things that involve intimate relationships and the like, that is considered in the category of Dava Sheba Erva. However, and I'm only going through this briefly, just briefly, Be'isurim, if we're not talking about those three categories, Momenas, Nefashos, and Erva, talking about Isurim, is this kosher or is this treif? Things like that nature, things that are in the category of Isurim, we have a cloud. Eid Echad is also Ne'eman Isurim. One witness is also Ne'eman Isurim. And even that Ne'emanos depends of if it's Chazak Isur, if the Isur was there, or if we're not sure if it's an Isur. For example, you have something treif and something kosher, and the Eid says, well, this one is treif and this one is Asur. So it all depends. But in general, we have this principle of Eid Echad Ne'eman Isurim. And an Isha is also, Ne'emanis also qualifies the trusted when it's Nisurim. And where do we know that from? According to Toises at least, we learn it out from a pasuk, Beferish a pasuk, by Zova, the Sofrala Shivas Yomim, that she counts to herself 7 days, right? So from there we learn that a Niddah counts for herself, and a husband can trust her. And according to Toises, this is where we learn Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Isur. Actually from the Zova, not only by men, is it acceptable? I mean, here we see that it's acceptable for a woman, and this is actually where we learn the whole principle of Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Isur. Okay, that's according to Toises at least. There are various other situations where a Isha is Ne'emenes. There's several, I'll just mention a few. One is a Gilui Milsa. Sometimes it's not a real Eidus. I mean, it's not Eidus. All it is they are revealing something to us that we eventually would possibly find out anyway. So, it's something that is only a Gilui Milsa, that's not called Eidus. They're just identifying something. They're not coming to us, or we're not trusting them or relying or asking to testify. They're just revealing to us something that we don't know. And this something that we don't know, we eventually would be able to figure it out if we investigate further. So if something can be investigated, something can eventually be found out, it's only a Gilui Milsa, she can be trusted. Another interesting situation where she is believed, even though there may be reasons not to believe. For example, is Chazak Isur. Chazak Isur means that the Isur is there. We just want to know if it's no longer an Isur, right? If it's biyodo letakno, if it's within her abilities to fix it, she's a professional. She knows how to treiberin, as we say. She knows how to remove the fats of the animal. She says, I removed all the fats. She knows how to do it. So if it's biyodo letakno, if it's within her ability to actually take care of this problem, she says, I took care of it, then she's also an emenes. That's why she can be trusted. On Afroshas Chala, I took Chala, Trumas and Maestras, right? And as I said, the Treber, removing the fat. The question is about removing the Gidanosha, the sciatic nerve. I've heard that in Iran, the women used to do, they knew what they were doing. It's a big question in the poskim. My son, not everybody would trust them, because when it comes to any job that requires a lot of work, detailed work, there's a Yerushalmi, I believe, that says that women are lazy. Now, that doesn't sound too nice, but we have to live with the facts. That sometimes, if something is very, very difficult, very, it requires a lot of work, they just may not want to do a thorough job. If Gida Noshi requires a thorough job, and it does, maybe we can't trust him on Nikur Achelek HaAchori, on being menakeh, meaning remove what needs to be removed around the sciatic nerve, from the back portion of that. But again, this is a situation where there may be a heter if we know for a fact that they know exactly what to do with themselves many times. They're God-fearing women. So you have enough to go by that even in that situation, perhaps you can trust them. But it's not so simple because we're talking about a deraisa here. All right. But we said something that depends on them, perhaps, that's one of the leniencies here. Now, if there's no cheskas isser at all, for example, what would be a situation where there's no cheskas isser? Let's say the woman is checking for bugs and worms. I didn't find any. Now, that could be a lot of work sometimes. If something is infested, depending on what we know about this vegetable or whatever. She says, I checked it, and it does require work, but there's no chazak of Isser. In other words, we don't know that there's an Isser there to begin with. So when something does not have to begin with by default an Isser, why invent it? Why make it? So we do trust them to say, I checked, even though it required a lot of work, I didn't find. Or another example would be an Isser D'Rabbanan. For example, let's say a woman says, I checked the whole house for chametz. It's a D'Rabbanan. Why is it a D'Rabbanan? That's a D'Rabbanan because by the time she checked, there has already been bitul. The husband has said, I'm being mevatel any chametz that I'm not aware of, that should be like the dust. Once there is bitul, that means at the very least, you're not over on a deraisa. So if a woman did the D'Rabbanan portion of the bdika, and she says, I did it, even though it's a lot of work, a lot of rooms, you can trust her. So since it's a D'Rabbanan. There's also another example of yichus. Let's say a midwife. That's what we call the woman who helps in giving birth to, right? Midwife, yeah. She says, you know what, today I acted as a midwife, she says, and I took care of several women, and I can tell you this baby is a kohen, he's a Levi, he's a chas v'shalom mamzer. She points and tells us which one is which, because nobody else knows. We trust her. Now, there have been stories of mistakes, there have been stories of women that lied, but I'm not going to talk about those exceptional situations. Ordinarily, the chachamim, this is a takanas chachamim, by the way. It's not a deraisa or anything, it's a takanas chachamim. We really shouldn't trust her, but because there's no other way, as you were saying before, there's no alternative. She's the only one around at the time of birth. She's the one that's facilitating the birth, so we got to know the yichus. The yichus is very important, who the child is. This is, of course, true only if there's no ir'ur, if there's nobody that will counter her, oppose her, saying, no, I know for a fact that this is not true, I know for a fact that that particular baby is not a kohen, whatever. If nobody's contesting her testimony, we believe her. That's a takanas chachamim.
Is that
It's a no, that's a form of edus. It is, and the reason why this is an exception is it's a takanas chachamim. The chachamim made a takana because al pi roiv, the majority of the time, she will be the only one there present. In situations like that, it's a takanas chachamim to allow us to rely on her testimony. If you want a little bit more information about Yore Deah and Bisurin, it's in Hilchas Yain Nesach, in Kuf Chof Zayin in Yore. All right. In Hilchas Niddah now, we're dealing with nemanos, of course, of a Niddah. Din isha she'amrot me'ani v'achakach amra tehorani. Let's say this woman says something very, very unusual. She said that I'm tmeya, and all of a sudden, a minute or two later, she says, oh, no, I really meant I'm clean. You first said you're tmeya, now you say you're clean. So that's when nemanos comes in. We have to understand what's going on here. Why did she say that? Why did she change her mind? Can I trust her now? What if she's a balas tshuva? She was never careful before, right? What if she once tricked her husband and told him something that was not true about her status? So that's what we're going to be learning now. So ha'ishashi becheskat me'ah. Now we're dealing with a woman who her status is, as far as we know, she's tme'ah. As opposed to what? As opposed to what we learned in the previous Siman, Kuf Peidala, towards the end, that an Isha that has a Veset Liamim, she has a regular Veset, every 28 days. The husband who's aware of that, of course, cannot be with her until he asks her, what's her status? And if she has no Veset, of course, the 30th day is like the time of her Veset, and so forth. But, Im Shahata, we said, Achara Veset Shiur v'tispor v'titbol yavo alea ve'en tzarich lish'ol. But if we know that she's waited after the time that she regularly gets it, enough days for her to become clean, to have gone to the mikveh by then you don't even have to ask her. Right, so we talked a little bit about this last time, that if the husband has calculated somehow he came home late at night, after a little trip, by this time she should be clean, then he doesn't even ask her. Now, we said the Aruch HaShulchan, we mentioned that the Aruch HaShulchan says nowadays some women perhaps don't go to the mikveh when their husband is not in town. It's always a good idea to ask. And this asking, as we will see, even more important when there's reason to doubt, obviously. We will see in this Siman. But generally speaking, it is possible for a man to assume that she's clean when at that particular time she should be clean. So here the Siman Kuf Pehei is starting off with the status of Tmeya. A woman who was Becheskes Tmeya, she was Tmeya. As far as we know, she was Tmeya. Asur lo lavo alea ad shetomar lo tavalti. The halacha is, and that is how we paskin, that a man cannot be with his wife until she explicitly tells him, I went to the mikveh. Now, what if she doesn't say it, but she makes a sign? She points to something that is very clearly in that she was. Fine. Yeah, she doesn't have to say those words. But if she was Tmeya that day, was up until now she was Tmeya, that night, when she comes down from the mikveh, somehow she has to relate it to the husband. Somehow the husband has to find out that she went to the mikveh, that she immersed. Otherwise, he cannot be with her. Maybe something happened the last minute. Shouldn't assume that she went. No. She was Becheskes Tmeya. Remember, the status was Tmeya. So how does she get out of that status? She has to notify. There has to be an official comment being made or strong indicator that he will know for certain that she's no longer Tmeya. All right. Now, the Chavas Das over here says that it would not be sufficient if that indicator that I mentioned is that she goes over and cuddles next to him. Something that she would not do if she's, of course, from during the time she's not going to be with her husband. All of a sudden, she puts herself close to him. Chavas Das says no. That's not enough. She has to say it. And the other place we say on the Chavas Das, why not? Isn't that an indicator of sorts? After all, if we're dealing with Eid Echad Ne'eman Be'isurin, since when does an Eid Echad actually have to always say? There are times when Eid Echad doesn't even say anything. He was mafresh trumas and maestros, fruits, and he brings you a gift. You believe him? That this is kosher? Do you have to ask him? Does he have to tell, by the way, I took off trumas? Hopefully if he's bringing this to you, he's already taken care of it. Hopefully he's already done it. Otherwise, he would tell you, no, listen, I didn't do this. By the way, when you go sometimes to buy liver, whether it's chicken liver or beef, many places today do not kosher it. You have to kosher it yourself. So they have to put a big sticker on the packaging, not koshered. Some people may not even know that. It's very bloody. One has to kosher the liver at home. And by the way, it's not so simple. You have to know how to kosher it. It's too bad that they're not koshering it. I didn't know why. It was much easier when the butcher did it. It was much easier when you bought it, it's kosher. You don't have to worry about it. So it's a tremendous responsibility on the people who are selling it to make sure that the people buying this know that this is not kosher liver. And it has to be prepared properly before you can cook it. So anyway, so according to the Chavas Das, it wouldn't be sufficient if she just somehow indicated to him in a very intimate way, I'm okay now. And the other person would say, no, it's okay. Because sometimes we see that a Eid Echad doesn't have to say anything. Why require him to say? With what he does, it's clear. If it's clear that it's probably okay. So that's what the other poskim hold. That any good, clear indicator would be sufficient. However, even though this woman is to be trusted, there are times when there can be doubts. And what are those times? So the Pischei Tshuva over here brings down about a woman who's chashuda. We suspect her on not being perhaps too careful with Hilchas Niddah, because she used to, before she was married, she was involved with people while she was a Niddah. So does not mean that she's also chashuda leba'alo to her husband. Just because before she committed znus while she was a Niddah, it doesn't mean that right now she's chashuda to her husband. You can trust her even during this man of the Veset. Hopefully she's not the same woman. However, the big exception to that is hichshila. She lied to her husband, tricked him, and he once was committed the avera, unfortunately, unintentionally, by relying on his wife. So in other words, if one time she lied to him, then she lost her nemanos during the time of her vesed, of course, until she does complete tshuva. What would be complete tshuva? I guess she went to get a tikkun of sorts from a chacham on how to be, and I'll talk about that in Siman, how to make it for that. And she's really careful. She's so sorry. She cried about it. She's careful. She shows her husband how she keeps track of her dates, and she's gone to a class. It's become obvious that she's done tshuva. She felt terrible about it. Why she did it? That also there's sif about why a woman would do something like that. The psychology behind this. But she would lose her nemanos until she's done complete tshuva. But if it's not during the time of her vesed, she's believed. There's no reason to suspect that she all of a sudden is being out of the blue. The big problem is during the vesed, she's lost in the manas. Or if she says, listen, I did go to the mikveh, I did immerse. So we don't say, no, she didn't go. She says, tavalti, we believe her. Well, perhaps we can add that the reason why sometimes these things can happen is because there is something called the Yetzer Hara. And sometimes, at certain days, at certain times, the man or the woman may do something wrong. And as a result of that, she could have intentionally misled her husband. And, of course, lost her nemanos as a result of that, until the husband feels confident and her nemanos is restored. All right, so that was the mechaber. So the mechaber says a man cannot be with his wife until he knows she went to the mikveh. The Ramah says, and after a number of days went by where it's possible that she's counted the days that are required, and she did go to the mikveh by then, she has nemanos. Even though he says, well, you're all full of blood. I mean, look at this. You're full of stains. She could be trusted to say, you know why I'm full of stains? That's because I went through the shuk, the marketplace where they were slaughtering meat, or I was preparing a bird, a pigeon, something, I got bloody. In other words, if it's enough time has transpired by when we believe that she could have easily have gone to the meat by then, even though all of a sudden we see, wow, she's all bloodied up, we can trust her explanation to that. I got dirty from this or from that. That's sufficient. Because we have the time, enough time has gone by ever since she was tmeya that she for sure could have by then gone to the mikveh. So why not, assume so? So she has nemanos for that, even though she's bloodied. All right, Sif Beis. Vehi muchzeka Niddah b'shchenoteh, שראו הלובשת בגדים המיוחדים למי נידותה, חשובה כוודאי טמאה. The Mechaber adds that if a woman has been seen by her neighbors wearing certain clothing that are known to be worn by her, by this woman, or by women, when they are a Niddah, she's considered for sure Tmeya. Why tell us that? Because we're going to see in Sif Gimel, the next Sif, that there are times where she can have an excuse that's acceptable, that will explain her actions. Whereas here, an excuse will not help. If she wore this clothing, and I'm going to explain that soon why not. If she wore clothing indicating that she's a Niddah, she's for sure a Niddah. So that's why the Machar brings this halacha here, because one is not sure she is or not, and everybody has seen her with clothing. That in itself, that is a form of edus. Everybody has seen her with this clothing. Why is she putting on this clothing? That she is a Niddah.
That is true.
Yeah.
How does the Chavos Das deal with that on the opposite of coming close and whatever is not? If on this side, strict on it, we accept it as a Niddah, and she's tall.
Oh, the act? Yeah.
It is up there.
The Chavos Das obviously was being machmir. That's why the other poskim disagreed with him. The Chavos Das was machmir that you need something explicit on her part to say that she actually went to resolve her situation. In other words, to determine that her status is no longer what it was. She has to do something, and that something has to be very clear. And being close to him is not enough. See what I mean? According to Chavos Das, it's just not enough. He requires something stronger. That's all. But a lot of places can disagree with him. Why would she do that?
Out being explicit.
Right, exactly. And we will see how this makes a difference. Why this is a very strong indicator that she's tmeya, as the Mechaber brings down. Chashubo kevadai tmeya, it's for sure that she's tmeya. We have no doubt about it. That in itself is an indicator, like you said, the other kind of indicator that she's a tmeya. All right, but when we learn Sif Gimel, we will understand a little bit more Sif Beis. Actually, before we go to Sif Gimel, there's a very interesting, the Taz brings down a very interesting story here. I think it pays to mention it. There's a story, Maaseh. B'isha there was a woman, sheyalda shalosh pe'amim b'chodesh hashmini. There was a woman who gave birth 3 times in the 8th month. And that's not good. 7th, okay. 9, great. The 8th, the Chacham said, is not so good. Even though today, yes, we have incubators or we have all kinds of ways of protecting the child, but nonetheless, she felt that was not a good siman. 3 times, 3 births in the 8th month, he says. She figured, what? Somebody must have given me a 9 hora. And she wanted the next time around to conceal her pregnancy from her family and from her neighbors. And how was she going to do that? She was going to tell everybody, in some way or fashion, that she's tameya. Nobody should think she's pregnant, which is, by the way, a good thing to do. Don't reveal as long as possible. No, well, not you. You're not. Well, women. Or the wife. That you're pregnant until it's almost impossible to conceal. And some women have it easy, the way of hiding it. But there's no mitzvah. Sometimes just women gotta say it. Gotta talk. Gotta tell somebody. Their mother. Don't tell anybody, not even your mother. No obligation. Okay. Now, even though she says, I'm not going to tell anybody, she's going to tell someone. So she asked, can she lie here to protect herself by telling everybody she's meya? V'hiskim balo, her husband agreed that she should do that. And the Ramah was asked, Im balo mutar lavo le beseter. Can her husband be intimate with her in private? Now, obviously, it's going to be in private. In other words, the question is here, even though to everybody she's Tameya, I made it clear, can he basically go against that and act with her as though she's not Tameya, because she's not Tameya? And the Ramah says it's fine. Mutter. Okay? Now, in order to understand this better, we will look at Sif Gimel, because this deals with justifiable excuses for doing something, appears that you may or whatever. Under what situation can you do or can you say something and then take it back, explain yourself, oh, I wasn't because of this. So this story, I think, is a good background to understand why the Ramah says for sure it's okay. I thought it was just interesting, not so much because of the heter, but also because of her concerns. Maybe there's an ein horror. Look at what sometimes could happen. Yes, these are valid concerns. Anyway, so Sif Gimel says like this, Amro lebalo. She tells her husband, he comes home one day, Tmeyani, unclean. V'achakach, and after a minute or so, and I'll tell you why I said a minute, Amro, Tahorani, I'm really clean. Einon emenes. We don't believe her. Wow. This is a shocker, no? Shavya nafsha chaticha d'isura. If you remember that term from the Gemara, there are times where a woman gets herself into trouble, I call it. Shavya nafsha, she made herself a chaticha d'isura. She made herself asur by saying something. Whether it's true or not is no longer the issue. She has done something by saying something. And that's what happened over here. Shavya nafsha chaticha d'isura, by her first saying tmeya. And she did not change her mind imhu le'acha kedei dibor. In other words, she could have, if she said within a couple seconds, no, I'm really tehara, that's different. But if it's not kedei dibor, as she's talking with a few seconds, if it's a minute later, she said, no, honey, she has no nemonis, for this time at least. Okay, so this, of course, requires a little bit of understanding what's going on over here. But at least for the time being, we know that she's just caused herself some trouble, and her husband too. I mean, the fact that she first stated that she's Tmeya, that's what she is. Okay? Whether she is or not in reality does not make a difference anymore. It's not, in other words. But it could very possibly be that she can get out of it. In other words, for the time being, what we need to know is what the Mechaber says. Changing your mind won't help you. The woman basically said she's Tmeya, so she's Tmeya if she did not correct herself within a few seconds. She's going to stay that way. V'imnosno amatla. However, if she gave a good amatla is an excuse, an explanation. If she gave a good amasla lidvoreha, if she says, well, honey, you know why I said first Tmeya? כגון שאומרת שלא אמרה לו כן תחילה לבדי שלא היה בכוח לסבול תשמיש או טענה אחרת כיוצא בזה נאמן. If she gives him an explanation as follows, you know, the reason I first told you Tmeya is because I really don't have a very bad headache. And I didn't think, you know, it would be possible, I didn't feel like it. If she really said something that makes sense, something like that, this is just, Rabbi Elyahu just gives one example. I put together a couple more. What's a good amasla? You know, I was sick, she says. I wasn't feeling well, and I am. Or, she says, she actually thought that she was Tmeya, but she checked herself, and she realized, it was just an afterthought. Maybe she felt something, but it wasn't that. That's another example. Or she says, you know why I said that? Because I was really upset at you yesterday. But now I calmed down. Or thank you for the gift, or for the flowers, and yeah. But with this upsetness, the husband knows for a fact that she was upset. Okay? He has to know for a fact that, yes, it's true what she's saying about the be upset. On this, the Ramah says, like this. It's brought down by the Beis Yosef, from the Gemara, I think it's Shmuel. Didn't want to take any chances. If you don't want to take any chances, you don't trust her, you don't care for what she says, you don't believe her explanations, you're just not sure 100%, you don't want to take a risk, it's Midas Chasidus. Next time, don't say that. What can I do? I don't want to take a chance. You can do that. Aval medina meikar adin ne'emenes. Afilu b'shtika, even she's silent. Achar kach, afterwards. And look what he says. Even if she didn't say anything, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I didn't mean it, I was sick. Even if she didn't say those words, the Ramah says, even Rakshi ba v'shochevet etzel balo, she goes ahead and lays down next to him. V'hu yodea u'makir shema she'amra tchilat mea ani asta machmat ktata shaya lo ima. And he knows that the reason she said that was because she was upset. And now she's not telling him the words, I was upset. But she's just coming next to him, and he knows that she was upset at him, so he's allowed to put two together. And even though she's not explaining or justifying herself, he can safely assume that she said Tmeya because of the fight they had. But as long as he's aware of the fight. So in this case, what the Ramah is saying, even if she doesn't say, that's the Chiddush of the Ramah. The Ramah is saying something that the Chavas Das, I guess, wouldn't agree with before. You know, she's just laying next to him. And here, if anything, he should even be more doubtful because she said first Tmeya. And now she's undoing her Tmeya statement by an act instead of something verbal. But because he's aware that it's true, in other words, that she was upset, and he figures, I know why she said that, and that is why she's doing this, which is obviously an indicator. It is an indicator. She's not doing it because she's not careful in Hilchas Niddah. If she can do something like that, and she's a normal righteous woman, we assume that she's now telling us she is clean. Yes?
But with this, just ask her.
Very good, very good, very good point, yeah. So I saw the Shach here says, that's not enough for me. Mikol makom, the Shach says, Nir'ad abal chayav lishol ota. Lama hi ba etzlo? Why are you all of a sudden coming to me? The Shach says, didn't you say you were Tmeya before? So the Shach exact says what you said. נראה דאבל חייב לשאול אותה למה היא באה אצלו? הרי אמרה עליו טמאה אני. דצריך להוציא האמת לה מפיה. The Shach said you got to get that confession out of her mouth. So the Shach says like similar to the Chavaz, at least in this case. The Bach I think also says like that. The Bach is machmer, you got to get it out of her mouth. But at least Me'ikar Adin, we know that these kind of examples would be sufficient to figure, okay, the first time around she said Tmeya, she didn't really mean it. These would be some of the examples of, I guess what she's saying makes some sense. Whether you need a verbal or not, okay, that's another question. The Rambam, however, reminds us that one of the things that will not work is if you said, I was joking, honey. No, that's not an acceptable excuse, that I was joking. So that's very interesting. The Rambam says, no, if that's what she says, don't buy it. Joking? No. Yeah, I guess people have to be more careful with their words. This is not a game. Continuation. Aval imra uha loveshet gadim amiyuchadim limenidota. So this is very similar to what we said before. But if everybody in the neighborhood saw her wearing the clothes of a niddah limenidota, and then she comes over to her husband, Amra tehorani. I'm really clean. Even though she gave an excuse. Well, I only did it, because it was Purim. I don't know. Some excuse. Eina ne'emenes. So this is similar to what we said before. Everybody in the neighborhood saw her wearing clothing. And we said before, in this kind of an example, when she's wearing these kinds of clothing, she cannot use an amatla. An excuse will not help her. The Rashba explains that this is much more serious than words. She's done an act. She didn't have to do that. She went out of her way to dress up with the clothing of her niddah. That's too much. That's already too much of a statement. That's how the Rashba explains it. Chavas Das explains it a little bit different. That Chavas Das says a masla does not help when there is eid in front of a basin. When an eid echad goes to basin and says it in front of a basin, he cannot change his mind. And wearing this in front of everybody is like eidus bifnei basin. But I saw that the Shav Shmaiteta, another Poisek, of course, contemporary, disagrees with the Chavas Das. He says going to basin, you can still give in a masla.
But isn't there a principle that is someone saying mouth that Asr may also permit?
Turkidei dibur. Yeah, Turkidei dibur, you can change your mind. But afterwards, it's a begeder shavya nafshe chaticha desur. Now, the shavya nafshe is a very important principle here. Otherwise, why not?
And then
why not? Unless there's an amasla. If there's an amasla, then we say, okay, that takes care of the original. That's strong enough to undo the statement. But without an amasla,
it sounds like once she asks, even though what is answering her, but the way the Isser, she's neither.
We don't know for sure.
But her saying so makes the Isser of, except for, you have that way out of it.
Right.
Which by Niddah, she can't talk way out.
Right, and if she doesn't have a good excuse, she's going to have to go through the 7 clean days and tefillah and so forth to get out of what she just said.
The liability and the amanas within a master, that depends upon or not. It was even for some women.
Right. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right. It's true to some extent. If the husband knows his wife very well, I only gave a few examples. There are other examples. Everybody was around. If the husband knows his wife and he knows that she's capable of doing that or saying that, has no reason to suspect it, then you're right. So to some extent, it would depend on the husband knowing. If he knows his wife, it makes some sense what she said. It has to make some sense. She has to give an explanation. Without explanation, it's worthless. But it would make a difference if he trusts her or not. Yeah. But here, the Shav Shmaiteta says it has nothing to do with, the Chavas Das want to say because by dressing up like that in front of everybody, it's like going to base. And the Shav Shmaiteta I saw says no, that wouldn't make any difference. The reason why she's asura is because huchzeka. She has now a chazaka that she's at meir because she wore those clothing. So once she has a chazaka, she cannot undo the chazaka. Okay, it's another explanation, that's all. Now comes along the Ramah and adds that Amra ploni chacham tahiharli ketem. That rabbi, he told me that this ketem, this stain that I had, is tohor. And the husband says, what? He went to the chacham. והחכם אומר שהיא משקרת, she's lying. Interesting. החכם נאמן, you believe the chacham. וטמאה היא, and she's טמאה. 1 against 1. You know why this is so? why do we basically believe him and not her? It's his word against her word. Her word. So the Shach brings down the Ran, who brings in the name of the Ramban. It says like this: Atam shekibel. We have a tradition. Sheken hadin. This is the din bechol eid mipi eid. Anytime you have an eid that is giving testimony, which is, by the way, not the best kind of testimony, but eid mipi eid. Eid saying that he told me so. Im baha echad. If the first one came vekafar, he denied what the other one said. En hasheni omer mishmo ne'eman. The second one who's saying it in his name will never be believed. In other words, he had a Kabbalah like that. That's our tradition. That's been the halacha. That eid mipi eid. If basically the first one who supposedly we are saying it in his name says that's not true. I never said that. The whole eidus is cancelled out. We don't believe the second one's name. Obviously, no. The Shach brings down the Ran, who wrote in the name of the Ramban. That this is the explanation why we believe just the Chacham. You saying it in his name? Well, he said no. However, being the Chacham, if he's only one, he cannot make her lose her ksuva, because he doesn't have the ability. When it comes to financial issue, to make her lose ksuva as a result of a big issue between them, she can no longer live with him. They have to get a divorce. One edus testifying that she's wrong or she's lying is not enough to make her lose her ksuva. Because this would be a cause. Yeah. Well, not exactly. Not this. It all depends. Yeah.
But
yeah.
The confusion, she's okay.
Right.
So is she sufficient or?
Now what? No, she's saying this Chacham said that the stain is okay. I said, no, I never said that.
Is he asking her?
So she's Tmeya here. No, should we consider her a Tmeya? We don't, the question is, well, why don't they figure it out now?
Mixed in with
exactly. Yeah, it's a situation where you can no longer verify it, obviously. Very good, yeah. Yeah, but basically her testimony is gone. If he told me, maybe you dreamt I told you. Right?
No, it has something.
Yeah, maybe you misunderstood.
He never said that, so I heard.
Right, okay, good.
But that would be an odd.
No.
Earlier you said he won.
Yeah. That's only if she misled him and he was involved with her.
So just no action?
That in itself would not invalidate her future right. Because I think that it would be good what you said to that. Because it could be, at some point she could say, well, that's what I heard. So that's very good what you said, because otherwise perhaps she should be not believed from now on. So these are situations that we treat them individually. This will not apply as a blanket removal of her ne'emanas from now on at altar. But for that time, she's not credible. And like Ilan said, it could be she heard. She heard wrong.
In other words, his saying never said so does not prove that it withdraws validity of her statement that based on him, she's permitted.
Yeah, very good, yeah. The last seif is an interesting seif because it deals with kapara, atonement. I'll go through it a little quickly. Chaz v'shalom, nobody should ever have this. Hayam meshameshim teorah, he was having a relationship with a woman who is clean, his wife. Ve'amra lo nitmeti, and in the middle she tells him, clean. Somehow she felt a very strong feeling, and she's convinced that she's tmeya. If this man, her husband, upiresh miyad, if he immediately got out, in other words, withdraws, chayav karet, he's chayav kares on withdrawing. Sheyetziato hana'alo kebiato. Because by withdrawing, that gives him pleasure in the same way as he gets pleasured when the entry. Okay. What should he do? He should wait. Ketzad yaseh. What should he do? Noetz tzipornei raglav ba'aretz. He should hold himself either on the ground, put his fingernails on the ground, or some other tzipornei raglav, toenails. What did I say? Fingernails. Well, yeah. Well, here it's the toenails, of the feet. He should place them in the ground. In other words, he needs something to hold himself. Right. Veshohe. The reason why I said fingernails too is because he can't touch her. He has to somehow remove himself at some point and not be leaning on her. So, no'etz tzipone raglav ba'aretz v'shoheh b'lo disha, and he waits without being active anymore, ad sheyamut ha'ever, until the organ is no longer stiff. It goes limp. Limp or limp, you're right. Uforesh be'ever met. And then he withdraws when that organ is limp. In other words, he has to wait. All right. What happens?
Having pleasure.
Right. Now, what happens now? What now? Okay, so he's done everything, but everybody feels bad, of course. So the Ramo brings down over here, and this is, of course, the Beis Yosef and others who say it perhaps in different words. Yimale pachad veretet ala avera sheba leyado. He should be very concerned and fearful about the sin that came his way, even though it was unintentional. Lo yismoch aleha. He should not, I guess this is where I took it from, he should not recline on her. Rak yismoch al raglav v'yadav. This is where I took it from. He should lean on his hands and feet on some other spot. Shelo yeheneni minha, so that he should not have any pleasure from her. V'im piresh mimena b'kishuyu b'shogeg. Let's say he did withdraw from her when he was still stiff, and he did it b'shogeg unintentional. Shelo yadasha, because what's an example of shogeg at this point? He didn't know that it's also to do dasha. Suli frosh mimena yit'aneh mem yom. He should fast for 40 days. Now these 40 days, which is, by the way, one way of atoning, tzrichim liyot retzufim. Enan tzrichim liyot retzufim, does not have to be continuous. Like kol shavua shnei yamim, you could do it over a period of time, every week, 2 days, kegon sheni v'chamishi, Mondays and Thursdays. Ubelela ta'anit asur b'yayin. The night, either before, according to some, or according to others, after the fast, he should not have any wine, a yain or basar. V'im lo yuchal litanot, and he cannot fast so much. Yifdeh kol yom b'mamon shiten tzedakah. He should redeem every day that he needs to fast with charity. Kifi erech mamon sheyesh lo, according to his means. Ki ashir yiten yoter k'tzat me'ani. A wealthy man should give more than a poor man. V'yesh lachmi b'tshuvato. Don't take this tshuva very lightly, but be strict with it. V'chol amarbeh lashuv zchut hu lo. Whoever does more to do tshuva on this, it's a tremendous merit for him. However, v'haisha enat tzricha kapara. The woman in this case does not need an atonement. She didn't do anything. V'im shimsha shelo b'shad distah. However, as we will see later on, somewhat of a similar situation. If a woman did have relations, but it was not during the time of her veset, umatzah achar tashmish, and she found blood, dam afilu nimtza al ed shelo, even though it's on his tissue that he checked himself. Mikre ones, all of these situations, if it's shelo b'sha'at veset, it's not when she's supposed to be getting it, and all of a sudden she senses blood. Let's say, she didn't feel anything. Later on they discover that there is blood. That case is an honest, not shogeg. Honest means an accident. She's not expecting it. Afilu lo bat katchila, even though she didn't check herself first. And nam tzrichim kapara. In that case, they both don't need a kapara. Lo hu velo hi. That's called an honest. So let me explain this a little bit more in detail. What does it mean? When is it an honest? When is it a shogeg? So let me quote the Rambam. The Rambam brings down like this: if somebody is with his wife during the time that it's not her veset, it's not the regular time that she's supposed to see the blood, and she sees blood during the time of tashmish. We're not talking about right now withdrawing, entering. Forget about withdrawing. Right now, they noticed later. They notice, oh, look, there is blood. They're both potter from a korban chatas. Why? Because that's called honest, not a shogeg. That's an accident. She's not expecting it. An accident is, you don't bring a korban chatas for accident. For shogeg, yeah. If it is a shogeg, the woman is part of a korban and does not need a kapora. In the case we gave, where he was shogeg, the woman would be potter from a korban. She does not need a kapora. But if they did have a relation during the time of the veset, when she's supposed to be getting it, or if it's or a woman who does not have a veset kavua, who according to some always should be checking herself, she doesn't have it, and she did not, then that's like a shogeg, not like a noines. In other words, if it's during the time of the veset, or if she does not have a veset kavua, and she should be, according to some person, checking herself every time, and she did not, so that's more like a shogeg and not an accident.
What would be another example for a shogeg?
If you did not know its chorus.
No, but that would be unless it was in this case that you just gave.
Oh no, there's all kinds. There's several more situations. the case of shogeg that we gave here, particularly was in the withdrawal.
They didn't expect it. It's not time of the vest. In her, it happens. It would still, if he withdraws without waiting for.
If he didn't know that it's asur, so that's the shogeg of not having the knowledge that it's asur.
What if he panics? He knows it, but he forgets for the moment. It can't be amazing.
No, that's more of an onus. If he did not,
he knows it, but right now it's his mind because he's no.
Exactly. So that's not. I don't think that would qualify as a shogeg. It's more of an onus. It was not in his control. That's what an onus is. Shogeg is you should have checked. You should have known. That's more of a shogeg,
or
right?
You should have waited.
Exactly. In this case, in this example.
Or you should have investigated.
Well, no. If it's during her time of her vested. Or if it's not during the time of her vested, but she doesn't have a vested kapara, which means that she should check, and she did not. In that case, some will say that she also needs a kapara. You should during the time that you should check.
Well, correctly said now. Even if it happened,
it's an oinus for both. They both don't need a kapara.
After the fact.
Right.
But if it's happening right now,
then the withdrawal is still a shogeg because it's asur.
Yeah,
now that you know it's asur. Okay, yeah.
And that doesn't depend on this or not.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue, right? Withdrawal or not, that's a separate thing. Now we're talking about they found blood later.
So if they found out after the fact, but it was during the vested,
yes.
then even that would be a shogeg.
If it's during the vested, yeah, because you shouldn't be together. Because you shouldn't be. Right. Because you shouldn't be. Yeah. Or another example was she didn't even tell her husband she's tmeya. She may need a kapara. When she should have told him, she became tama. So I gave a few examples where she's not, but there are cases that she may also need a kapara if it's really her fault. Anyway, just to finish up here, the Pesach Tshuva here brings this whole Indian of fasting, and this is a Kabbalistic thing. It's a known thing that 3 consecutive days is equivalent to 40 days.
2 consecutive 48.
3 consecutive 72 hours.
70 days.
What is that?
3 consecutive to 72 days.
It's equivalent to 40 days. The 40 days of required fasting is equivalent to 3 consecutive days. In other words, you have a choice. If you need to do 40 days, and by the way, those 40 days ideally should be consecutive, one after the other, but even though we just said it doesn't have to be.
No,
what is that?
Consecutive.
Yeah, no. When I said 40 days, it's brought down one day after another, just daylight, not night, right? We learned here that it doesn't have to be day after day. It could be Mondays and Thursdays.
Right.
And we'll see that there's an advantage to that, according to the Mogen Avram.
Well,
now what I'm saying is, Kabbalistically, it's brought down in the Sifrei Kabbalah that if somebody needs to fast 40 days, instead of 40, he can do it in 3 if it's day and night.
Right.
That's all.
Interruption.
Without interruptions.
But I thought that, and what's 2 days?
Some say that if he's very weak, 48 hours is enough, he doesn't need the 7. There is such an opinion. But I think it's just one opinion, the whole thing. I don't remember. I know that the general...
I'll look it up.
The general idea is 3. Yeah.
As my recollection is, when you fast 8 hour day, it's 24 hours.
Right.
As soon as you extend it, and so then we'll be
look it up. It could be there is such an opinion. It could be there is another opinion, but the general,
I don't remember exactly.
The general concept here is 3 24 hours. It's just like Esther told everybody to do.
Is that
by Megillas Esther.
And so that's not days of no food, no.
A healthy person can handle it, but it's. I'm going to tell you now that it's not always advisable.
Right.
Yeah.
I know someone wanted to do it. What do you call it?
No, that's not the same. Monkey mice. The Mogen Avram brings down that, in his opinion, it's always better to scatter the fasts over many days, because he says what will come out from it is that there will be more days where a person will become heartbroken. He has more time to reflect on it, and if he gets it over in 3. Interesting idea. If you spread it over, it's similar to what the Rambam says. If you have $1,000, give $1 to 1,000 people instead of giving 1,000 to one person, because you'll be getting 1,000 mitzvah. It's not so much the mitzvah; you'll be getting used to giving. Obviously, there are cases where you don't want to just give $1, but the idea is the more you do something, the more effect it has on you.
Also give 1,000 times.
No, of course, that's even better. Now, the Chassam Sofer, if you look up the Chassam Sofer about this whole tshuva thing, he says that the ikar in all kaparas, when a person is doing tshuva and wants a kapara for these kind of things, the main thing to remember is it's better, he says, Toiva mardus achas belibo shel adam. It's better for a person to have one very, very strong feeling of being sorry in his heart That's better than 100 lashes. A real strong feeling of regret, remorse, is more important than anything. Therefore, he says, the main thing is the kavanas halev, how a person feels, his intention, the confession, the charata, the regret, the davening, and all this that one asks for Hashem for forgiveness. And what we generally do today, I mean, if people ask what to do about this situation, generally the way to deal with this kind of situation is to tell people, deem their fast with tzedakah, with more learning of Torah. That is generally what we tell people. That is what people who come to consult what to do. Because there is a list of Averos, unfortunately, that have a certain amount of fast. If somebody did it more than once, how many has to fast? And you're never going to finish fasting all your life.
100 years.
Yeah, exactly. So there are ways to redeem it with a certain amount, minimal amount of money. And of course, like we mentioned before, the wealthier a person is, really give according to his. Either way, I mean, the main idea here is that situations like this should not go by unattended. Something like this happens, a person should feel bad and should take whatever necessary action to seek for a kapora, and of course to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. But Hashem Yishmor. I also see this situation as a sign from Shemaim. Chas v'shalom. We're not talking about shoygig. That's your fault. Shoygig in a way is negligence. It's close to negligence, which is called pshia. He's not really negligent here, but he was shoygig. It's bad enough. You bring a korban chatas because you did an animal act. What's the animal act? You didn't use your head. Just like an animal doesn't have a head. A korban chatas, you bring an animal because you acted like one. You didn't think, study, you didn't review the halachas, and so forth. But if an honest happens, which a person is completely not at fault, still he should think to himself, why did this happen? That's also, requires some thinking. Even though he doesn't have to bring a korban chatas, tshuva is something that should always be done, even if something happened unintentionally. It's just that obviously that there's a difference between the levels of mezid, intentionally, shoygeg, and oinus. Obviously, either way, it's not a good sign. And the good part about all this is, of course, Hashem doesn't want us to feel bad continuously, not go on with our life. We need to go on with our life, and tshuva is the key to being able to restore us back to our normal state of healthy minds. We come to terms with that, we deal with that, and we go on. All right.